So it's time for us to go and take a look at the M1 Mac Mini and see how this particular Mac still holds up in 2024. Now, the thing I will definitely tell you about this particular Mac is that in a lot of ways, it's still pretty much completely still worth buying. It was a very good Mac when it first came out. It was honestly groundbreaking in a lot of ways, and I still think it's completely worth buying for the most part. But the thing I would definitely tell every single person who's looking at a Mac is to go ahead and look at it in a few different ways. One, do you plan on using a Mac, basically at a, at home standpoint? If there's a reason why you need a Mac Mini, then go for it. But I've always found MacBooks with dongles and accessories plugged in can kind of give you a better experience. And, now that these MacBooks, the M1 MacBook Airs, MacBook Pros, these types of devices have gone down in value so much, it might make a little bit more sense to go and buy something like an M1 Mac Mini for some people, but I do think for a lot of other people, it might make a little bit more sense to buy a MacBook Pro or MacBook Air because you can get that portable aspect to it and you can always dock it up to a monitor and get a very, very similar feeling, the same type of performance as an M1 Mac Mini. So I will go ahead and leave not only a Mac Mini, but some MacBooks linked down in the description as well. If you want to pick them up from there, you can, and you can also help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the M1 Mac Mini, this particular Mac came out, I think, back in 2020. And this particular Mac looked very good on the front. I liked it, when it first came out. Honestly, there's not a lot to hate on it. It's a pretty minimalistic looking type of, and it's very small and slim for what you're getting. At the very top, you're getting this standard Apple logo, which looks and feels pretty good. It doesn't feel good. It looks kind of cool to have an Apple logo right at the very top. Beyond that though, there's really not anything else going on for the top of this particular Mac. On the front side, there also really isn't anything else except a little tiny LED light. It's completely flat-sided for the most part, but it does kind of curve, around. It's like a square, but it's a squared off edge. And I do think it looks really nice for the most part. And on the bottom, you're getting that standard, little puck where you can just kind of put it on a hard surface somewhere and it won't move around, which is very nice. But then we get to the port selection on the back side. Now this is where things are a little bit interesting. So for one, you're getting that power button on the back, which again is nice. I like having a power button on the back. It's definitely a cool thing. But I like how the Mac Studio has it on the front. That is definitely something that I like a lot with this particular device. And I love having that on these types of, Macs. On the Mac Mini, on the other hand, I wish it was kind of on the front. There's another thing I wish there was on the front too, which we'll talk about in a second. But you are also getting inside of this Mac Mini 2 Thunderbolt USB 4 ports. So you can go ahead and do, 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports from there. You're also getting 2 USB-A ports, an HDMI port, and then a Gigabit Ethernet port as well. Now with this type of Mac, it is very cool that you have that type of capability because once again, you can easily just go ahead and, plug in all those accessories that you want to on the backside. And there are a lot of accessories you can plug in here. You're getting those 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, which, for a lot of people might not seem like enough, but don't forget, you can always use one of those ports to dock it up to another Thunderbolt dock, or you can dock it up to a Thunderbolt monitor and get even more ports from that. So yeah, there's only 2 and 2 for the, USB-C and USB-A ports, but you can easily just go at it and essentially get that other port selection straight by just going through and getting the other device there. If you want to go and get an accessory like a dongle, you can just go and get it and then plug it in that way. That is another thing you can do, and that's something that I love getting with these types of Macs. Same reason why I love MacBooks, the MacBook Pros or MacBook Airs. You can just go ahead and get a 2-port Thunderbolt MacBook, and you can go and plug in all the accessories you want to that way, and that's another really cool thing going on for that particular device as well. So personally for me, definitely gets a thumbs up for me without a doubt. Now, the other side, there's one caveat to this, for one, the monitor selection that you're getting, you can either use an HDMI monitor, you can use a USB Type-C Thunderbolt monitor. So you have a few things there, but the problem that we kind of have with these M1 Macs is that you can only dock it up to one monitor at a time. This is by far probably my biggest frustration with the first early gen M1 MacBooks. The M1 Pro MacBook, you can dock it up to multiple monitors. The M1 series of Macs, you were not able to do that. The standard M1 Macs, this was kind of the problem for me because I had to go through and use a completely different MacBook or a completely different iMac to even utilize a different type of display with a universal desktop mode. With these Macs, you can't do that. Now you can use a Thunderbolt monitor, you can use an HDMI monitor, you can move things around if you want to, but you cannot use 2 different monitors at the same time unless you use this whole workaround, which is buying a separate device and then docking it up that way. That's just kind of annoying. I didn't really want to do that. But for me personally, I already had another MacBook laying, or I had another iMac laying around. I was able to use universal desktop mode in it. But that is kind of the issue, I would say, for the most part, is that with these M1 Macs, if you're using multiple displays, you won't be able to do it here. But if that's not a big deal to you, if you don't plan on using any sort of multiple displays set up on this thing, then it's probably not going to be that big of a deal. You're probably going to be okay for the most part. But that is probably going to be one of the biggest problems that you're going to run into if you're expecting multiple displays. Beyond that though, it's really not the biggest deal in the world. I think it's totally fine and totally expected for the most part. But personally for me, that was probably my biggest frustration with these particular Macs at that time. Beyond that though, that's kind of my only caveat. That's like my only issue I ever really had with these particular Macs. Everything else about this Mac is pretty much, 2 thumbs up for me personally. Even the standard base model M1 Mac is still very, very good. The thing you have to remember is that these were the first generation Apple Silicon chips Apple threw in here. So these weren't like the, 5th generation Intel chips or anything like that. These were the first ones Apple made. So there could have been lots of issues. There could have been lots of problems that, these chipsets had. And there were some in the beginning with. But for the most part, from a stability standpoint, Apple pretty much knocked it out of the park in my personal opinion. I think they did a really, really good job with this particular Mac at that time. And it still is a very good performing Mac, especially if you're looking for a at-home desktop that you don't want to take, if you don't want to take anywhere with you. This thing, even you can take this thing with you because this thing's so portable. That's another really cool thing going on for this particular Mac as well. Now the specifications inside of this thing, you can do 8-core CPU, you can get up to 8 cores of your GPU, and you can get up to 16 gigabytes of RAM, but this thing does start off at 8, so keep that in mind. You can get up to 2 terabytes of storage. Now, I will tell you, if you're going through and getting like the 16 gigabyte, 2 terabyte Mac Mini, either you might as well go up to M2 Mac Mini, or you might as well go up to a M1 Pro MacBook Pro at that point, because you are getting more performance and you're getting a portable machine at that and getting more, I would say, better port selection because you are getting an SD card slot in that too. So just keep that in mind. But I would say from a performance standpoint, it doesn't really get that much better from this thing from a performance standpoint from an Apple Mac. I think, if you're wanting a more performance heavy MacBook, you have that, or a performance heavy Mac, you have those types of capabilities. But really for everything you're ever going to do on this type of Mac, you're going to be getting very good performance. You have to remember, the M1 Mac Mini, the M1 MacBook Pro, and the M1 MacBook Air all pretty much kind of had the same type of performance. There could have been like 1 core less on here and there, but for the most part, pretty much exactly the same type of performance all over the place, which I actually liked a lot. You were getting very good performance on these Macs, and that is actually a very cool thing going on here. Now, my only caveat with the Mac Mini is if you need a little bit more performance. Let's say you're, a heavy power user and you need like a 32 gigabyte of RAM machine at the bare minimum. You will not be able to get that on this particular Mac. You will have to go up to either like the MacBook Pros, the current MacBook Pros, or you have to switch over to maybe like the Mac Studio or something like that, or Mac Pro. But I will tell you, from a pricing strategy standpoint, I think Apple did a really good job with these early gen M1 Mac Minis. I think these Mac Minis are very good, and if you're in the market, I generally don't think I don't think these are bad. I think these are very, very good, and I think Apple did a really good job with these particular Macs. Are they perfect? No. Like I said, I wish there was a power button on the front and an SD card slot on the front. I also wish there was a, multi-monitor support on this thing. But beyond that, I think Apple did a really good job with these Macs, and I think they're completely worth buying. If you can buy them for like a couple $100 cheaper than what they were being sold in the brand new market, by all means, I think those are really good deals. But I do think if you want a little bit more of a portable machine, or if you're able to find a MacBook Pro, the M1 model, for about the same price as a Mac Mini, you might as well go for the MacBook Pro, because you're getting you're getting a monitor, you're getting so much more from that, I feel like, than a Mac Mini. But that's pretty much how I feel like the Mac Mini holds up in 2024. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.